The slave markets of Station Orbis 7 smelled like fear and metal. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy moved through its endless corridors, buying and selling flesh as easily as they would buy food or clothing. Here, life had a price tag. Here, freedom was just another product. Princess Yuna walked 3 steps behind her mother, the great Empress Hana of the Valari Empire. The Empress moved like water through the crowds, her silver robes flowing behind her, her face showing nothing but cold boredom. To her, this visit was politics, a show of power, a reminder to the lesser species that the Valari ruled this part of the galaxy. Yuna hated every moment of it. She was young by Valari standards, barely 200 years old. Her skin was pale blue, like all her kind, and her eyes were large and dark. She stood taller than most species in the market. But she felt small. The cages around her held beings of every shape and color. Some cried, some screamed, most had simply given up, their eyes empty and dead. "Mother," Yuna said quietly, "must we stay much longer?" Empress Hana did not turn around. "You wanted to see the galaxy, daughter. This is the galaxy. Not the pretty parts. Not the comfortable parts. The real galaxy, where power matters and weakness is punished." Commander Tewu walked beside them, his hand resting on his weapon. He was the head of the Imperial Guard, a soldier who had served the throne for 300 years. His face was hard and scarred from countless battles. He trusted no one and suspected everyone. "The delegation from the outer systems awaits, Your Majesty," he said. "Let them wait," the Empress replied. "They came to us. They can learn patience." They continued through the market. Yuna tried not to look at the cages, but she could not help herself. A small creature with fur and large ears pressed its face against the bars, watching her pass. A tall being with scales and no eyes stood perfectly still, waiting for a buyer who might never come. A group of females from some water world huddled together, holding each other for comfort. And then Yuna saw him. He sat alone in a cage at the far end of the row. The cage was small and dirty, barely large enough for him to lie down. A sign above the cage read, "Human, Earth Origin. Male. Discount price." Yuna had heard of humans. Everyone had. They came from a small planet on the edge of known space. A world that had been conquered during the First Contact War just 10 years ago. The Valari had expected the humans to surrender quickly. They were small. They were weak. They had no advanced technology, no space fleet, no psychic abilities. But the humans had fought anyway. They had fought with everything they had. And then, they had fought with things they did not have. The war had lasted 3 years. The Valari had won. Of course, they always won. But the victory had cost more than anyone expected. Now, the surviving humans were scattered across the galaxy. Some worked in mines. Some served in households. Some, like this one, ended up in places like Orbis 7. Yuna stopped walking. The human did not look like much. He was shorter than a Valari, with brown skin and black hair cut close to his head. He wore simple gray clothing, torn and dirty from the journey. His hands rested on his knees, palms up, relaxed. But his eyes were what caught Yuna's attention. They were dark brown, almost black, and they were watching, not staring at nothing like the other slaves. Not crying, or screaming, or begging. Just watching. Studying, taking in every detail of the market around him. When his eyes met Yuna's, he did not look away. He did not bow his head or show fear. He simply looked at her, as if she were just another piece of information to be collected and stored. A chill ran down Yuna's spine. She had seen predators before, in the royal hunting grounds. This human had the same look. Patient, quiet, waiting. The auctioneer noticed her interest and hurried over. He was a fat creature, with too many arms and a smile that never reached his eyes. Ah, Your Highness, you have excellent taste. This human is a fine specimen, captured during the pacification of Earth's northern continent. A soldier, we believe, though his records were lost during transport. Why is he so cheap? Yuna asked. The auctioneer's smile flickered. Well, there were some difficulties. The sedatives we use during transport do not work well on humans. Their bodies process chemicals differently. This one required 5 times the normal dose. We feared there might be brain damage. Is there? We are not certain. He has not spoken since his capture. Not a single word. Some buyers find that unsettling. Yuna looked at the human again. He was still watching her, his face showing nothing. He is not brain damaged, she said quietly. He is thinking. The auctioneer laughed nervously. Your Highness, with respect, humans are not known for their intelligence. They are a primitive species, barely capable of— Buy this human for me, mother. Empress Hana turned around, her expression showing mild surprise. What? I want him. Buy him for me. The Empress studied her daughter for a moment, then looked at the human in the cage. Her lip curled slightly in disgust. That? It is barely more than an animal. Yuna. Surely you would prefer something more impressive. A Taurian battle servant, perhaps. Or a Nexan singer. I want this one. Commander Tewu stepped forward, his hand tightening on his weapon. Your Majesty, I advise against this. Humans are unpredictable. Dangerous. During the war, I saw what they could do. This one was a soldier. He should be destroyed, not brought into the palace. He is in a cage, Yuna said. He is unarmed. He is alone. What threat could he possibly pose? The Empress looked at her daughter, and something like amusement crossed her face. Very well. If it will make you happy, daughter, consider it a gift for your naming day. She waved her hand at the auctioneer. How much? For your Majesty? A mere 500 credits. A bargain. Truly. The transaction was completed in moments. The cage was unlocked, and 2 guards pulled the human to his feet. He did not resist. He did not speak. He simply stood there, his dark eyes moving from face to face, taking in everything. Yuna stepped closer to him. Up close, she could see scars on his hands and arms. Old wounds, long healed, the marks of someone who had lived through violence. What is your name? She asked. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice rough from disuse, he spoke his first words since leaving Earth. Kang Do-hyun. Yuna nodded. Welcome to the Valari Empire. Kang Do-hyun. You belong to me now. Something flickered in his eyes. Not fear. Not anger. Something else, entirely. Yes, he said quietly. I understand. But as the guards led him away, Yuna could not shake the feeling that she had just made either the best decision of her life or the worst. She would not know which for a very long time. The imperial palace of the Valari Empire was the largest structure Do-hyun had ever seen. It rose from the surface of the homeworld like a mountain made of crystal and light, its towers reaching so high they seemed to touch the stars. Millions of beings lived and worked within its walls. Thousands of servants moved through its corridors, keeping the great machine of empire running smoothly. And now, Do-hyun was one of them. They gave him new clothes first. Simple gray robes, clean and soft, with the symbol of Princess Yuna's household sewn onto the chest. They fitted a translation implant behind his ear, a small device that turned the strange sounds of alien languages into words he could understand. They assigned him quarters in the servants' wing, a small room with a bed, a table, and a window that looked out over the city below. Then, they told him his duties. He was to be the princess's personal attendant. He would carry her belongings. He would stand behind her during meals. He would follow her wherever she went, ready to serve her needs. In the eyes of the palace, He was barely more than a piece of furniture, a curiosity, a pet. Do-hyun accepted all of this without complaint. On his first morning, a senior servant named Keeper Bora came to instruct him. She was an older Valari woman, with gray in her blue hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You will not speak unless spoken to," she told him. "You will not make eye contact with anyone of noble blood. You will bow when the princess enters a room and remain bowed until she gives you permission to rise. You will not touch anything that does not belong to you. You will not leave the palace grounds without permission. Do you understand?" "Yes," Do-hyun said. Bora studied him for a long moment. "I have heard stories about your kind, about the war. They say humans fight like animals, that you have no honor, no dignity, that you would rather die than surrender." Do-hyun said nothing. "I do not know if those stories are true," Bora continued. "But I do know this. If you cause any trouble for the princess, I will personally see you sent to the mining colonies. There are no windows there. No sunlight. No hope. Just darkness and work until you die. Do we understand each other?" "Yes," Do-hyun said again. "Good. Now come. The princess is waiting." Princess Yuna's chambers were in the eastern tower of the palace. The rooms were large and filled with light, decorated with plants and art from 100 different worlds. She was sitting by the window when Do-hyun arrived, reading something on a glowing tablet. She looked up when he entered and smiled. "Ah, there you are. I was beginning to think they had lost you." Do-hyun bowed deeply and stayed bowed. "You can stand up," Yuna said, sounding amused. "You do not need to bow every time you see me. It will become very tiresome very quickly." He straightened slowly. "Thank you, Princess Yuna. When we are alone, you may call me Yuna. I do not like titles." Do-hyun hesitated. In his experience, people who said they did not like titles still expected to be treated with respect. Calling a princess by her first name could be a test, a trap, but her eyes seemed honest, open, curious. "Thank you, Yuna," he said. She smiled wider. "There. That was not so difficult, was it? Now, come. Sit. I have questions." Over the next hour, she asked him about Earth. She wanted to know about the oceans, and the mountains, and the cities. She wanted to know about human food, human music, human art. She asked about the war, but carefully, as if she understood that some wounds were still fresh. Do-hyun answered her questions simply and honestly. He told her about Korea, the country where he was born. He told her about the cherry blossoms in spring and the snow in winter. He told her about his mother's cooking and his father's stories. He told her about joining the military, about training, about the day the Valari ships appeared in the sky. He did not tell her about the battles. Not yet. Some things were not for sharing. When he finished, Yuna was quiet for a long time. "It sounds beautiful," she finally said. "Your world. I am sorry we took it from you." Do-hyun did not know what to say to that. No one had ever apologized to him before. Not the slavers who had captured him. Not the auctioneers who had sold him. Not the guards who had transported him across the galaxy in chains. "It is still there," he said carefully. "My world. My people. They survive. But not you. You are here now." "Yes. I am here." Yuna looked at him with something like sadness in her large dark eyes. "I know this is not fair. I know you did not choose this life. But I promise you, Do-hyun, I will treat you well. You are not a prisoner to me. You are. I do not know what you are yet, but not a prisoner." He nodded slowly. "I understand." That night, alone in his small room, Do-hyun sat by the window and looked out at the alien city. Flying vehicles moved through the air like fish through water. The lights of a million buildings glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, Earth was still turning. He closed his eyes and began to count. 14 guards in the eastern corridor, 8 in the western, 2 at each elevator, 4 at the main entrance. The guards changed shifts every 6 hours. The first shift began at dawn, the second at midday, the third at sunset, the fourth at midnight. The palace had 17 levels above ground and 5 below. The power systems were in the lowest level. The communication center was on level 12. The Empress's chambers were in the central tower, the most heavily guarded section of the entire structure. He had been watching, counting, memorizing. It was what soldiers did. It was what survivors did. You gathered information. You learned your environment. You waited for the right moment. Do-hyun did not know what moment he was waiting for. Escape? Revenge? Something else entirely? He did not know. Not yet. But he would keep watching, keep counting, keep waiting. Because that was what humans did. They survived. They adapted. They found a way. And Do-hyun intended to find his. The days passed slowly. He followed Yuna through the palace, carrying her belongings, standing silently while she attended meetings and ceremonies. He learned the names of the noble families. He learned the politics of the court. He learned who hated whom, who feared whom, who wanted power and who already had it. And every night, he added to his mental map of the palace. Yuna continued to talk to him when they were alone. She asked more questions about Earth, about humanity, about his life before the war. She seemed genuinely interested in his answers, not mocking or condescending like the other Valari. One evening, she asked him why humans fought so hard during the war. "You must have known you could not win," she said. "Our technology was centuries ahead of yours. Our ships could destroy your cities from orbit. Why did you keep fighting?" Do-hyun thought about the question for a long time before answering. "Because we had nothing else," he said finally. "When you have nothing to lose, you become dangerous. A man with nothing to lose will do things that a man with everything would never dare." Yuna frowned. "I do not understand." "You will," Do-hyun said quietly. "Someday, you will." She did not ask what he meant. Perhaps she was afraid of the answer, or perhaps she already knew. The Festival of Stars was the most important celebration in the Valari calendar. Once every 50 years, the 3 moons of the homeworld aligned perfectly, and the entire empire stopped to honor the event. Millions of visitors came to the capital. The streets filled with music and light. The palace opened its doors to nobles from every corner of the galaxy, and in all that chaos, no one noticed the shadows moving through the service corridors. Do-hyun stood in his usual place, 3 steps behind Princess Yuna, as she attended the grand ceremony in the main hall. The room was enormous, filled with thousands of guests, dressed in their finest clothing. The Empress sat on her throne at the far end, her face as cold and beautiful as carved ice. Something was wrong. Do-hyun could feel it in his bones. He had spent 30 years of his life as a soldier. He had fought in jungles and mountains and cities. He had learned to trust his instincts, the small voice in the back of his mind that whispered warnings when danger was near. That voice was screaming now. He scanned the crowd, looking for anything unusual. The guards seemed relaxed, almost bored. The nobles laughed and drank and talked about nothing important. The servants moved through the crowd with trays of food and drink. But there, near the eastern entrance, 3 servants who moved differently than the others. Their steps were too precise. Their eyes were too alert. They did not carry trays. They carried something hidden beneath their robes. Do-hyun's heart began to beat faster. He leaned forward slightly and whispered into Yuna's ear, "We need to leave." Now, Yuna turned to look at him, surprised. "What? The ceremony has barely started. I cannot simply—" "Please," Do-hyun said. His voice was calm, but something in his eyes made her stop. "What is wrong?" I do not know yet, but something is wrong. I feel it. Yuna hesitated. She had no reason to trust him. He was a slave, a human, a former enemy soldier. But in the months they had spent together, she had come to know him. He did not speak often, but when he did, his words meant something. Very well, she said quietly. We will go to my chambers. But you will explain this to me. They slipped out of the hall through a side door, moving quickly through the corridors. Do-hyun kept his body between Yuna and the shadows, his senses alert for any sign of danger. They had almost reached her chambers when the screaming started. The sound came from the main hall, a chorus of fear and panic that echoed through the palace. Do-hyun heard weapons fire. The sharp crack of energy weapons mixed with the deeper sound of explosions. The Empress, Yuna gasped. My mother. She tried to turn back, but Do-hyun grabbed her arm. No. If they are attacking the main hall, they will have sent someone here too. Your chambers first. We secure you, then we find out what is happening. You cannot tell me what to do. I am the princess. 5, 1. You are alive, Do-hyun said firmly. I want to keep you that way. Please. Yuna looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. They reached her chambers, and Do-hyun pushed open the door. The room was dark. The lights turned off. Yuna reached for the switch, but Do-hyun stopped her. Wait. He whispered. He could smell something. Blood. Fresh blood. Keeper Bora lay on the floor near the window, her throat cut. Her eyes were open and empty, staring at nothing. No, Yuna breathed. No, no, no. A figure stepped out of the shadows. It was one of the servants from the main hall, still wearing the palace uniform. But now, he held a blade in his hand, long and curved and stained with Valari blood. Princess Yuna, the assassin said. His voice was cold and flat, without emotion. The old order ends tonight. Your family's reign is over. He moved fast. Faster than any human could move. The Valari were physically superior to humans in almost every way. Stronger, quicker, more durable. But they had never fought something like Do-hyun. The human threw himself forward, putting his body between the assassin and the princess. The blade cut across his chest, opening a deep wound that immediately began to bleed. The pain was enormous, like fire spreading through his body. Do-hyun ignored it. He grabbed the assassin's wrist and twisted hard. The Valari was stronger, but Do-hyun knew where to push, where to pull. He had studied anatomy during the war, learned where the weak points were. The assassin's wrist snapped. The blade fell from his fingers, but the Valari did not stop. He swung his other hand, striking Do-hyun in the ribs. Something cracked. More pain. Sharp and bright. Do-hyun kept fighting. He drove his elbow into the assassin's face. Once. Twice. 3 times. Blood sprayed from the Valari's nose. The assassin staggered back. Surprised. No one had ever fought back like this. No slave. No human. No one. What are you? The assassin growled. Do-hyun did not answer. He did not have breath to spare for words. He tackled the assassin to the ground and began to hit him. Again and again, his fists rising and falling, each blow harder than the last. The assassin tried to throw him off, but Do-hyun held on with everything he had. His vision was going gray. Blood loss. Shock. His body was failing him. But his body had always been a tool to be used, not a treasure to be protected. He had learned that lesson long ago. In the mountains of Korea, fighting an enemy that could not be beaten. You did not need to win. You just needed to not lose. You needed to keep fighting until the fighting was done. 47 seconds. That was how long it took. When it was over, Do-hyun knelt on the floor, breathing hard. The assassin lay beneath him, still and silent. Dead. Do-hyun looked down at his hands. They were covered in blood, blue and red mixed together. His chest wound was still bleeding. His ribs screamed with every breath. His vision was fading. But he was alive. And more importantly, Yuna was alive. The princess stood near the door, her face pale with shock. She stared at Do-hyun as if she had never seen him before. "What?" she whispered. "What are you?" Do-hyun looked up at her. His eyes were dark and tired, filled with pain but also something else. Something ancient and savage and utterly human. "Human," he said simply. Then he collapsed. He woke 3 days later in the Palace Medical Center. The Valari doctors had worked on him for hours, repairing his wounds with technology far beyond anything Earth possessed. The cut on his chest had been closed. His broken ribs had been set. The damage to his internal organs had been fixed. He should have died. Any Valari would have died from shock long before the doctors arrived. But humans were different. Their bodies flooded with chemicals during times of crisis, suppressing pain, keeping them moving even when movement should be impossible. The doctors had never seen anything like it. Yuna was waiting when he opened his eyes. "You saved my life," she said quietly. "Yes. Why?" Do-hyun thought about the question. It was a good question. Why had he risked everything to save someone who owned him? Someone whose people had conquered his world. "Because you saw me," he said finally. "In that auction house, when everyone else saw an animal, you saw a person. You gave me a name again, a purpose. I could not let them take that away." Yuna's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and took his hand, holding it gently in her own. "Thank you," she said. "I do not know what else to say. Thank you." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "You are welcome." Outside, the palace was in chaos. The assassination attempt had failed, but the damage was done. The empress had survived, but dozens of nobles had died. The questions were just beginning. Who had sent the assassins? Why did they want the royal family dead? And what did this mean for the empire? But in that small room, none of that mattered. There was only a princess and a human, holding hands in the darkness, bound together by blood and survival. Something had changed between them. Neither of them knew what it was yet, but they would find out soon enough. Commander Taewoo stood in the center of his office, staring at the wall of screens before him. Each screen showed a different piece of information. Reports from the investigation, images from the attack, medical records, personnel files. He had been studying them for 3 days straight, barely sleeping, barely eating. The assassination attempt had shaken him to his core. 23 nobles dead, 47 servants. The Empress herself had come within seconds of death, saved only by a quick-thinking guard who had thrown himself in front of the blade. But it was not the attack itself that troubled Taewoo most. It was what had happened in Princess Yuna's chambers. A human slave had killed a trained Valari assassin. With his bare hands, that should have been impossible. Taewoo had fought humans during the war. He had led soldiers on the surface of Earth, engaging human resistance fighters in brutal close combat. He knew what they were capable of. He had seen them do terrible things. But this was different. This was something he did not understand. He pulled up the medical report from the palace doctors. The human, Kang Do-hyun, had suffered injuries that should have killed him. A deep chest wound, 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, damage to his liver and spleen. Any Valari would have collapsed from pain alone. The body would have shut down, protecting itself from further damage. That was how biology worked. That was how it had always worked. But the human had kept fighting. For 47 seconds, while his body was failing, he had continued to attack until the assassin was dead. How? Taewoo opened a new file. Classified research on human biology, compiled during the war by Valari scientists. He began to read. Humans are persistence predators, the report said. They evolved on a harsh world, where resources were scarce and competition was fierce. They could not run faster than their prey, so they learned to run longer. They chased animals for hours, sometimes days, until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. This created several unique biological adaptations. First, humans had an unusually high pain tolerance. Their bodies produced natural chemicals that suppressed pain signals during moments of extreme stress. A human could continue to function with injuries that would incapacitate any other species. Second, humans had remarkable healing abilities. Their bodies constantly repaired themselves, regenerating damaged tissue at a rate that astonished Valari doctors. Given time, a human could recover from almost anything. Third, and most troubling, humans adapted. They changed. They evolved. The report included a timeline of human technological development. 10,000 years ago, humans had been primitive creatures using stone tools. 5,000 years ago, they had built their first cities. 1,000 years ago, they had developed advanced mathematics and engineering. 100 years ago, they had split the atom. 50 years ago, they had begun exploring space. No other species in the known galaxy had progressed so quickly. Most civilizations took millions of years to develop what humans had achieved in mere centuries. They are not weak, the report concluded. They are unfinished, still evolving, still climbing. Given enough time, they may become one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Tae-woo closed the file and sat in silence for a long time. He thought about the war. He thought about the battles he had fought. He thought about the human soldiers who had charged his positions, even though they knew they would die. He thought about the cities that had fought street by street, building by building, until nothing was left. At the time, he had called it madness. Now he wondered if it was something else entirely. He requested a meeting with the Empress. She received him in her private chambers, still recovering from the attack. Her face was tired and pale, but her eyes were sharp as ever. "Commander, what have you found?" "The assassins were hired by a faction within the Outer Territories," Tae-woo reported. "Lords who believe the Empire has grown weak under your rule. They hoped to kill you and your daughters, then install a puppet on the throne. I will deal with them," the Empress said coldly. "What else?" Tae-woo hesitated. "There is the matter of the human. Yuna's pet? What of him?" "He killed an assassin, a trained Valari operative, armed and prepared. The human killed him with his bare hands, while suffering injuries that should have rendered him unconscious." The Empress waved her hand dismissively. "So? The human got lucky. Animals sometimes fight back. It means nothing. With respect, Your Majesty, I believe it means a great deal." He told her what he had found in the classified reports. He told her about human persistence, their healing abilities, their rapid evolution. He told her about the war and what it had really cost the Empire. "We lost 60,000 soldiers conquering Earth," he said. "A planet with no space fleet, no advanced weapons, no psychic abilities. We expected the campaign to last 6 months. It lasted 3 years. And even now, there are resistance movements on the surface that we cannot destroy." The Empress's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting, Commander?" "I am suggesting that we have underestimated humanity. That we continue to underestimate them. This slave in the palace is not just a pet. He is a trained soldier, a survivor of the war. He has been watching us, learning us, for months. And when the moment came, he killed one of our best operatives without hesitation. Should I have him executed?" Tae-woo considered the question. Part of him wanted to say yes. The human was dangerous. He had proven that. Removing him would be the safest choice. But another part of him hesitated. The human had saved Princess Yuna's life. He had risked everything to protect her, even though she was his owner, even though her people had enslaved him. That was not the behavior of an animal. That was something else. "No," Tae-woo said finally. "Not yet. But he should be watched. carefully. While Tae-woo investigated, Yuna spent more time with Do-hyun. He was recovering quickly, much faster than the doctors had predicted. Within a week, he was walking again. Within 2 weeks, he was back at his duties, standing 3 steps behind the princess, as if nothing had happened. But something had changed between them. The barrier of princess and slave had cracked. Yuna no longer saw him as property. She was not sure what she saw him as now, but it was not that. She asked him to teach her about Earth. Not just the beautiful things, but the hard things, the real things. He told her about Thermopylae, where 300 warriors had held a mountain pass against an army of hundreds of thousands. He told her about Stalingrad, where soldiers had fought building by building in the frozen ruins of a city. He told her about the fall of Singapore and the Long March, and 100 other battles where humans had faced impossible odds. You measure victory differently than we do, Yuna said. One evening. What do you mean? For Valari, victory means winning, defeating your enemy, surviving. Do-hyun nodded slowly. For humans, it is more complicated. Sometimes victory means dying on your feet instead of living on your knees. Sometimes it means making your enemy pay such a high price that they think twice before attacking again. Sometimes it means simply not giving up. Even when giving up is the smart choice. That sounds like madness. Maybe. Or maybe it is the only way to survive when you are small and weak and everyone wants to destroy you. Yuna was quiet for a long time after that. She thought about the slaves in the markets, the countless beings from conquered worlds who served the Empire. She thought about the humans scattered across the galaxy, working in mines and households and factories. She thought about what it meant to own another person. And for the first time in her 200 years of life, she began to question everything she had been taught. The message came at midnight, slipped under Do-hyun's door by hands he never saw. It was written in Korean, the first words from his homeland he had seen in over a year. Just 3 lines. We know who you are. We know what you did. Meet us in the lower service tunnels. Level 5, 3rd hour past midnight. He should have ignored it. He should have reported it to the palace guards. He should have stayed in his room and pretended he had never seen it. Instead, the lower service tunnels were the hidden veins of the palace, carrying water and power and waste to every corner of the massive structure. Few guards patrolled these areas. Few nobles even knew they existed. Do-hyun found them waiting in a small maintenance room. 3 beings from 3 different worlds. A human woman with short gray hair and scars on her face. A tall, insect-like creature with compound eyes that reflected the dim light. A small, furry being with large ears and quick, nervous movements. Kang Do-hyun, the human woman said. Her name was Choi Sun-mi, and she had once been a captain in the Earth Resistance. The soldier who killed a Valari assassin with his bare hands. You have become a legend in the slave quarters. I am no legend, Do-hyun said. I am just trying to survive. Do-hyun said, I am just trying to survive. We all are. That is why we are here. She told him about the resistance network. It had no name, no formal structure. It was just a collection of slaves from dozens of species, united by a single goal. Freedom. They had been planning for years, she said, gathering information, building connections, waiting for the right moment. The assassination attempt changed things, Sun-mi explained. The empire is weakened. The noble houses are fighting among themselves. The military is stretched thin, dealing with unrest in the outer territories. If we move now, we have a chance. A chance for what? Revolution. The word hung in the air like smoke. Do-hyun looked at the other members of the group. The insect creature stared back at him with unreadable compound eyes. The furry, being twitched nervously, its ears rotating to catch every sound. What do you want from me? Do-hyun asked. We want you to lead us, Sun-mi said. You are a trained soldier. You know the palace better than anyone. You have proven that humans can fight the Valari and win. The other slaves will follow you. Do-hyun was quiet for a long time. He thought about Earth. He thought about his family, his friends, his comrades who had died in the war. He thought about the years of captivity, the auction house, the collar around his neck. Part of him wanted to say yes. Part of him wanted to burn the palace to the ground and watch the Valari Empire crumble. But another part of him thought about Yuna. She was not like the others. She had seen him as a person when everyone else saw an animal. She had talked to him, listened to him, treated him with dignity. When she looked at him now, he saw something in her eyes that he had not seen in a long time. He saw hope. "No," he said finally. Sunmi's face hardened. "No, I will not lead your rebellion. I gave my word to protect her." "Her? The princess?" Sunmi's voice dripped with contempt. "She owns you, Do-hyun. You are her property, her pet. She could sell you tomorrow and never think of you again. Maybe. But I do not think so." "You are a fool." "Perhaps." Do-hyun turned to leave, then stopped. "But I will not fight against you either. I will not betray you to the guards." Sunmi studied him with cold eyes. "Then what will you do?" "I will help you. Not as a leader, not as a soldier, but I can give you information. Guard rotations, security protocols, the layout of the palace." He told them about the reactor core in the lowest level. He told them about the communication center on level 12. He told them about the weaknesses in the guard patrols that he had been noting for months. "Use this information wisely," he said. "And when the moment comes, make sure it matters." He returned to his room before dawn, slipping through the shadows like a ghost. 3 days later, Yuna found him on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "You have been distracted lately," she said, standing beside him. "More than usual." "What is wrong?" "More." Do-hyun did not answer immediately. He had always been careful about what he told her, protecting her from things she did not need to know. But something had changed after the assassination attempt. The walls between them had cracked, and he was tired of hiding behind them. "I was contacted by the resistance," he said. Yuna's breath caught. "What?" "They wanted me to lead them, to help them start a rebellion against the Empire." "And what did you say?" "I said no." Yuna turned to look at him, her large, dark eyes searching his face. "Why?" It was the same question she had asked after he saved her life. And just like then, Do-hyun struggled to find the words. "Because I gave my word to protect you," he said. "Because you saw me as a person. Because..." He paused, trying to find the right words. "Because I believe you are different. I believe you can change things." "Change things?" "I am just a princess, the youngest daughter of the Empress. I have no power. Power is not given. It is taken. It is earned. You have more power than you know, Yuna. The question is, what you will do with it." Yuna was silent for a long time, staring out at the stars. "My whole life, I was taught that the Empire was good," she said quietly. "That we brought order to chaos. That the lesser species needed our guidance. But since I met you, I have started to see things differently. The slaves in the markets, the workers in the factories, the soldiers who died in the war. They are not lesser. They are just people, like us, trying to survive. What will you do about it?" "I do not know. Not yet. But I will do something. I promise you that." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "Then I will stay by your side. Whatever happens. Whatever you decide." 8. Do-hyun. 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 Nodded. Yuna reached out and took his hand, just as she had in the medical center after the assassination attempt. Her skin was cool against his, alien and familiar at the same time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." They stood there together, two beings from different worlds, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was still turning. Somewhere out there, the resistance was planning its next move. And somewhere deep in Do-hyun's heart, a spark of hope had begun to burn. He had not felt hope in a very long time. It felt strange, dangerous, wonderful. He held on to it tightly and did not let go. The rebellion began on a night when 3 moons hung full in the sky. It started in the lower levels, where the slaves lived and worked in darkness. The kitchen workers put down their knives. The maintenance crews abandoned their posts. The cleaners, the carriers, the countless nameless beings who kept the palace running simply stopped. Then the fires began. Do-hyun woke to the sound of alarms and the smell of smoke. He was on his feet in seconds, his body moving, before his mind had fully woken. He had slept in his clothes for the past week, knowing that something was coming. The information he had given the resistance had been too valuable. They would use it soon. Tonight, he ran through the corridors toward Yuna's chambers. The palace was chaos. Servants ran in every direction, some fleeing, some fighting. Guards struggled to maintain order, but there were too many fires, too many attacks coming from too many directions at once. The resistance had planned well. Yuna was awake when he reached her, already dressed, her face pale but determined. Keeper Bora's replacement, an older woman named Keeper Minji, stood beside her with a weapon in her hand. "What is happening?" Yuna demanded. "The slaves are rising," Do-hyun said. "All of them. Across the entire palace. The Empress. My mother. I do not know. The communication systems are down. The guard channels are flooded with distress calls." A massive explosion shook the building. The lights flickered and died, replaced a moment later by the dim red glow of emergency power. "The reactor," Do-hyun said quietly. Keeper Minji grabbed Yuna's arm. "We must get you to safety, Princess. The emergency bunker beneath the central tower." "No." Yuna pulled her arm free. "I will not hide while my people die. We need to reach the communications center. I need to speak to the Empire." "Why? Why will not hide while Setter? Why? 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 Why?" "Princess, that is madness. The rebels control most of the palace. We would never make it." Yuna looked at Do-hyun. "Can you get me there?" He should have said no. The communication center was on level 12, right in the heart of the combat zone. The corridors between here and there were filled with fighting. The chances of survival were small, but he had given his word. "Yes," he said. "Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say." They moved through the burning palace like ghosts. Do-hyun led the way, his senses alert for danger, his body ready to react at any moment. Keeper Minji followed close behind, her weapon drawn. Yuna stayed between them, her face set with determination. They passed through corridors filled with smoke and fire. They stepped over bodies, Valari and slave alike, killed in the fighting. They heard screams and weapons fire, and the roar of flames. Twice they encountered rebel groups. The first time, Do-hyun talked them past, speaking Korean to the human fighters, explaining that the princess was different, that she wanted to help. The second time, talking was not enough. There were 5 of them. 3 humans and 2 beings from other worlds. They surrounded Do-hyun and his group in a narrow corridor. Weapons raised. "The princess dies tonight," the leader said. He was a young human male, barely 20 years old, his face scarred from the war. "All the royals die. That was the plan." "The plan has changed," Do-hyun said. "Let us pass. Who are you to change the plan? I am the one who gave you the information that made this possible. Guard rotations, security codes, the location of the reactor. All of it came from me." The young man hesitated. "You are the one? The soldier? Who killed the assassin?" "Yes." "Then why are you protecting her? She is one of them. She is the enemy." Do-hyun stepped forward, putting himself between the rebels and Yuna. "She is not the enemy. She is the future. The only chance this rebellion has of becoming something more than just destruction." Pretty words, but words do not free slaves. Violence does. Violence starts revolutions, Do-hyun agreed. But it does not finish them. You can burn this palace to the ground. You can kill every noble in the empire. And then what? The military will come. The outer fleets will return. They will crush you. And everything you have fought for will mean nothing. He took another step forward, close enough to touch the young man. But if the princess lives, if she speaks to the empire, if she stands with you instead of against you, then this changes everything. The rebellion becomes a revolution. The violence becomes justice. Is that not what you want? Is that not what we all want? The young man stared at him for a long moment. The fire reflected in his eyes. Orange, and red, and hungry. Then he lowered his weapon. "Get to the communication center," he said. "We will hold the corridor." They reached level 12 as the sun was rising. The communication center was a large, circular room filled with screens and control panels. A few technicians remained at their posts, too terrified to flee. They looked up as Yuna entered, their eyes wide with shock. "Princess," one of them stammered. "We thought you were dead." "Not yet." Yuna moved to the central console. "Is the broadcast system still working?" "Yes, but..." "Then open a channel. Empire-wide. Every world. Every station. Every ship. Princess, I cannot authorize." "I am authorizing it." Yuna's voice was sharp, commanding. The technician looked at his colleagues. They looked back. Then, slowly, he began to work the controls. "Channel open, Princess. You are live across the Empire." Yuna took a deep breath. Do-hyun saw her hands trembling slightly, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "This is Princess Yuna of the Valari Empire. I am speaking to you from the Imperial Palace on the homeworld, where a rebellion is currently taking place." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "For centuries, our empire has been built on the labor of slaves. Beings taken from their homes, stripped of their freedom, forced to serve us against their will. We called them lesser species. We treated them as property. We told ourselves that we were bringing order to chaos, civilization to the primitive. We were wrong." Her voice grew stronger, more certain. "Tonight, I have seen the cost of our arrogance. I have seen beings fight and die for freedom, the most basic right of all sentient life. I have seen courage and sacrifice from those we called animals, and I have realized that we cannot continue as we have. Therefore, as Princess of the Valari Empire, I hereby abolish the institution of slavery across all imperial territories. From this moment forward, any being held in bondage is free. Any who resist this decree are enemies of the throne." She looked directly into the camera, her large, dark eyes burning with conviction. "This is not a request. This is not a suggestion. This is the will of the imperial family. Those who stand with us will be welcomed. Those who stand against us will be remembered only as obstacles that history swept aside. The old order ends tonight. A new age begins." She cut the transmission. For a moment, there was only silence. The technicians stared at her, as if she had grown a second head. Keeper Minji looked like she was about to faint. Do-hyun stepped forward and placed his hand on Yuna's shoulder. "That was very brave," he said quietly. Yuna turned to look at him. Her eyes were wet with tears, but she was smiling. "I told you I would do something. I told you I would change things. You did. The question now is what comes next." Outside, the sounds of fighting were changing. The weapons fire was growing quieter. The screams were fading. Something in the air had shifted. Yuna had thrown a stone into the water. Now they would see how far the ripples spread. 3 years had passed since the night the palace burned. Empress Yuna stood on the balcony of the rebuilt central tower, looking out over a city transformed. Where once there had been slave markets, there were now free trading posts. Where once there had been chains, there were now handshakes. The galaxy had changed, and she had changed with it. She was no longer a princess. Her mother had abdicated 6 months after the uprising, unable to accept a world without the old order. She had retired to a distant estate, where she spent her days in quiet isolation, refusing to speak to anyone. Yuna did not miss her. The transition had not been easy. Many nobles had resisted the abolition of slavery. Some had raised armies, trying to restore the old ways. The military had split, with some commanders supporting the new order and others fighting against it. But in the end, the tide of history could not be stopped. The freed slaves had organized themselves into political movements, labor unions, and community groups. They had demanded representation in the Imperial Council. They had demanded justice for the crimes of the past. They had demanded a voice in their own futures. Yuna had given them all of it. Now, former slaves sat on the council beside Valari nobles. Trade treaties were negotiated by beings who had once been property. Schools taught children of all species to read and write and dream. It was not perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was better than before. And through it all, Do-hyun had been by her side. He stood behind her now, no longer 3 steps back but right beside her, as an equal. His official title was Imperial Advisor, but everyone knew he was more than that. He was her conscience, her protector, her friend, perhaps something more. But neither of them had spoken those words aloud. Not yet. There is a delegation from Earth arriving tomorrow, Do-hyun said. The new government wants to discuss full diplomatic relations. Do-hyun, 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 Do-hyun. I know. I have been preparing. Earth had been liberated 2 years ago. The occupation forces had been withdrawn. The human resistance had formed a new government, fragile but determined. Refugees who had been scattered across the galaxy were slowly returning home. Do-hyun had been offered a place in the new government. A high position. Recognition for his role in the revolution. He had refused. My place is here, he had said simply. Yuna had not asked him to stay. She would never ask that of him. But when he had made his choice, she had felt something in her chest unlock. A tension she had not known she was carrying. Are you nervous? She asked him now. About seeing your people again? A little. It has been a long time. I am not the same person who left Earth. None of us are the same. That is the nature of change. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city below. A ceremony was being held tonight to mark the 3rd anniversary of the uprising. Dignitaries from across the reformed empire would attend. Speeches would be made. Honors would be given. The story of the revolution would be told and retold, growing larger with each telling. Do-hyun did not care much for ceremonies. He preferred to work in the shadows, solving problems, preventing crises before they began. But Yuna had asked him to attend, and he had agreed. He would always agree when she asked. Later that evening, the great hall filled with beings from 100 worlds. Former slaves stood alongside former masters, united by hope for a different future. Children ran between the legs of adults, laughing and playing, unaware of the history that had brought them here. Yuna gave a speech about unity and progress and the work that remained to be done. It was a good speech, well-crafted and inspiring. The audience applauded warmly. Then, as the ceremony was ending, a young Valari noble approached Do-hyun. The noble was barely out of childhood, his face still soft and unformed, but his eyes were sharp with curiosity. You are the human, he said. The one from the stories. I am a human, Do-hyun corrected gently. There are many of us, but you are the one who killed the assassin. Who led the empress through the burning palace? Who refused to let the rebels execute the old empress, even after everything she did? Do-hyun studied the young noble. Where did you hear these stories? Everyone knows them. You are famous. I did not do those things to become famous. Then why? It was the same question Yuna had asked, years ago, in the medical center. The same question Sunmi had asked in the service tunnels. The same question Do-hyun had been asking himself for 3 years. Because someone had to show you what humanity really means, he said finally. Not just our capacity for violence, but our capacity for mercy, for loyalty, for hope. The young noble frowned, trying to understand. But we enslaved you. We conquered your world. We treated your people like animals. How can you forgive that? I have not forgiven it. Some things cannot be forgiven, but they can be moved past. They can be learned from. They can become the foundation for something better. I do not understand. Do-hyun smiled slightly. You will. Someday. He looked across the hall and saw Yuna watching him. She smiled. The same smile she had given him in the medical center. In the corridor during the uprising. In 1,000 quiet moments over the past 3 years. Not the smile of a master to a servant. The smile of an equal. A partner. Perhaps something more. Do-hyun excused himself from the young noble and walked across the hall to join her. What were you talking about? Yuna asked. The past. And the future. That sounds very serious. It was. But I think I handled it well. Yuna laughed softly. It was a sound Do-hyun had come to treasure, rare and precious. I have been thinking, she said. About what you said. Years ago. About victory meaning different things to different people. What about it? I think I understand now. For my people, victory meant conquest, domination, control. But for you, victory was never about winning. It was about proving something. Proving what? Yuna took his hand, just as she had done so many times before. That you were wrong about us, she said. That we could be better than we were. That given the chance, we would choose compassion over cruelty. Do-hyun looked at their joined hands. Her pale blue skin, against his brown, alien and human, different and the same. Was I right? He asked. I do not know. I hope so. I am trying to be. That is all anyone can do. They stood together in the great hall, surrounded by the noise and light of celebration. Outside, the stars shone down on a galaxy in transformation. Earth was healing. The Empire was changing. The future was uncertain but bright. And in that moment, Do-hyun realized something. He was no longer a slave. He was no longer a soldier. He was no longer even a survivor. He was something new. Something that had never existed before. He was hope. And hope, he knew, was the most powerful thing in the universe. More powerful than weapons. More powerful than hatred. More powerful than the chains that had once bound him. He held Yuna's hand tightly and looked toward the future. It was going to be interesting. He could not wait to see what happened next.